And in the absence of a chair and vice chair, I'll call this meeting to order and declare a quorum. The only blue ribbon panel member we're missing is Jay Como. And Jay's walking in as we speak. So we've got a full panel. Welcome. And thank you. I'm very excited to get this process kicked off for you guys. And I say that in the best spirit that I can. This is about what you guys, you have been charged with a mission by the council, and it's your job to figure it out. And this is not what Mike Sly thinks you ought to be doing. This is what this panel ought to be doing, okay? Or anybody else for that matter. You guys are responsible for the charge that has been assessed, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later on tonight. I hope that we will have an opportunity to elect a chair and a vice chair. If you're not comfortable with that process at this point, you can table that action item and move it to the next meeting perhaps, or if you are comfortable in electing a chair and a vice chair, later on tonight we'll have that opportunity. So given that, I think what I'd like to start this process off with is just a simple introduction, and we'll go around the table. And you are here seated like you are seated for a reason, because this particular issue can be volatile and contentious. We have 6 members of the MUD. We have 6 members of the PID. And I sat and tried to figure out how do we get everybody around the table, around the dais. And so what I've got is everybody, we've got a PID, MUD, PID, MUD, PID, MUD in alpha sequence. That's how we're starting tonight. It may not be how you finish. If you end up wanting to elect a chair and vice chair tonight, obviously those will be those 2 chairs, and we'll move it out. And if there's a position that you particularly care for moving forward, we'll try to do that as well. All of the major meetings that you have as a panelist, as a panel, will be videoed for the benefit of those citizens who would like to look at it on video and not come and listen in person. They'll have that opportunity. We'll upload it just like we do all of our council meetings. So let's get started by at least introducing ourselves. Tell everybody a little bit about what you like to do, and what kind of professional services you might offer this group. And if you are interested in a leadership position, you might indicate that as well. It might help as we move through this later on this evening. Okay, and there'll only be 2, a chair and a vice chair. So, Mitch, or if you prefer to be called Mitch, let everybody know how you would prefer to be called. What you've got up here is what your application name is.
All right. Mitch is fine. Mitch is fine. Mitchell's fine. Chris is fine. Whatever, just whatever works. I am currently an elementary teacher over in Haltom City since '07 when I retired from the Postal Service. I was with the Postal Service 30-some years, Air Force 4 years before that. My position with the Postal Service was I had 1 foot in facilities and 1 foot in production. Worked with capital investments, large plant facility projects, anywhere from site selection through going on the floor and developing fixed mechanization projects, material handling projects, that sort of thing. So a lot of it was cash flows, maintenance, city meetings about how to build, where to build, that sort of stuff. So that's sort of my connection, I guess, with what we're doing. Married to my wife of 40 years, got 3 kids, and welcome to be here. As far as chair and vice chair goes, I will bow to someone else.
Okay.
But appreciate it, and look forward to meeting all of you I've met tonight so far. So.
Patrick? And before we move any further, feel free to please speak into the microphone so it's picked up for the benefit of the folks who do want to watch this. You know, if the microphone's too far away or you're too far away, it won't always pick it up. So.
How you doing? I'm Patrick Arata, I live back in Churchill Downs. I'm a government agent. I'm currently in administration right now. I no longer work in enforcement, but I run our aviation program. So I work with contracting, purchasing, budgets, things like that, so I can bring that sort of stuff to the table. Go by Patrick. So that's pretty much it for right now.
Okay.
I go by Jay Como, or Jay, and I'm an ops executive in the financial services. I have a large staff around the globe. So I'm comfortable in a leadership capacity if appointed by this group, but I'm also very comfortable being an individual contributor and doing critical analysis. So it's not something I aspire to do, but I'd be willing to do it if we have a small turnout. I probably would, in a past life or earlier in my career, wanted to be a city manager, so I get to do these things kind of vicariously. My career path's gone a different direction.
The
but
light turned on.
What's that?
The light turned on.
So that this is, I think, just being involved with these kind of things and just with the city overall is a sort of a hobby of mine. But I've had budget responsibility throughout my career, and I've been a finance manager, so sort of the critical thinking aspect of the financials is something that I'm interested in doing and contributing to the panel. And throughout the years, just done a lot of consolidations among the businesses that I've managed, and this is very similar, so looking forward to that. And lastly, it's a pretty, as we all know, it's a pretty contentious issue, so I'm looking forward to trying to demystify it, the panel, all of us collectively sort of taking the nature of the tough discussion and the yelling and just making it about facts. I think that we can do a really cool thing here and analyze the facts, so I'm excited to be a part of that as well.
Good evening. My name is Ron Beaker. Retired May of 2011 after 30 years of federal government service with the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC. The last job I had with them was here in Dallas, responsible nationwide for all bank closings in the nation from 2005 to 2011 when I retired. So I've been rather busy during that time period, unfortunately. Love Trophy Club. I have no idea what all the issues are, so I'm really coming unbiased. But I love this community. We fell in love with Texas when I first started with the FDIC back in the 80s. My family has moved from across the country to Texas Trophy Club. So I'm very happy to be here, and will defer to others in terms of the chair and vice chair position. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Robbie Duncan. Built a house in the Highlands about 16 months ago. Fell in love with this community. Have a project manager for a roofing company based in South Lake, so I'm well familiar with the Trophy Club area, and was in Arlington for a zillion years and moved out here again several months ago. Always been in sales. Was in the automobile business. Sold Cadillacs for 30 years before I bought into a roofing company. Like this guy here, I'm going into this with an open mind as well. I just want to make a contribution to this community, and it's just a fantastic area, and really want to do my part to help. And as far as I've got great organizational skills, but as far as the leadership of it, my comfort level with that is if we to kind of get an understanding and kind of get a feeling about what this is all about, and I'm more than happy to assist in that. But at this point, I would really like to understand a little more about it before I jump into it.
I'm Wes Carlton. I go by Wes. Wesley is what my mother calls me moments before pain begins. So please call me Wes. I'm a disaster expert. I do large-scale disaster recovery projects all across the world. So I've done the World Trade Center and Pentagon, a few places like that that you would recognize. So I'm comfortable in project management. I'll serve in any capacity. I'm not pushing for anything, but I am excited to be here. It's an honor to serve, and I'm looking forward to making an impact at Trophy Club, which we love.
That's great. Well, my name is Wanda Franklin, and I'm the CEO and president of Pharmaceutical Consultants Incorporated. I've been in business since 1994. Appeared before several Senate committee, both federal and Texas. My company is from coast to coast and border to border. there's not too much else that I can say other than we've been in Trophy Club for 14 and a half years. We've loved it. For that, we were in Bedford for 22 years. We don't move too often, as you can see. So anyway, I think it's an honor that you chose me as one of the participants, and I do have an open mind. And when you work with the federal government and with pharmaceuticals and hospitals, you have to keep an open mind, and you have to bring everybody together. So I feel like I can handle this.
I'm Ron Edens. My wife and I live at 221 Inverness Drive. We've been married for 45 years, have 3 kids, 6 grandkids. I'm a retired federal prosecutor for 36 years. I prosecuted white-collar crime cases involving grand jury investigations and so forth. And I am intrigued by the process of government entities coming into existence and going out of existence. That's really what piqued my interest in participating in this. Although I think that the tax aspect of the question that would be presented to this panel is much more important. And so I think that I would best probably serve as in a connection with the issue that has to do with legalities and so forth and so on like that, as opposed to perhaps the tax implications and rate implications and all that kind of thing, which I think should be one of the big priorities of the committee.
Hi, I'm Tim Gamache. I'm a naval officer. Spent 19 years flying off carriers for the Navy, and now I'm the Navy's representative to the FAA for this region of the country. So with my background, I think what I bring to the panel is I don't get emotional generally, and I believe that we should look at everything in a logical, common sense approach. So that's what I offer to this panel. I'm glad to be here. We chose Trophy Club because it is a small community. We get to know a lot of people, and we like it a lot, and we want what's best for the community as a whole. So that's my approach going into this, and I'd be happy to serve as a leader in a leadership position or as just one of the team, either way.
Good evening. I'm Nicole Fontaine, and what I'm really known for is being a transformation executive. I typically have been asked to take on organizations that were not performing as well as they should have been, and then I have led the turnaround and taken those organizations to world class, and in one case best in class. Now I am working with organizations, typically the CEOs and CIOs. I was a CIO for a number of large local jurisdictions, helping them with strategy, governance, performance. And in my spare time, I am a Texas qualified mediator, very active in dispute resolution services. I'm on the board there at the DRS in Tarrant County. My term is running out, but it's something that's near and dear to my heart, and so that's definitely a skill that I bring to the table. And we love Trophy Club. We do.
I'm Robert Hillman. We've been here. I'm probably one of the newer residents here. I've been here for about a little bit over a year. We moved from Atlanta, where we spent 15 years. My wife's position with Alcon Labs. So it's a long commute for her, but she loved this area. We love the schools. You have two kids, one in high school, one in middle school. So our big reason for moving this area is the schools. We love our house. So we live next to the golf course, so we have tons of golf balls if anybody needs some. We got 2 buckets full. Mm-hmm. My career has been in product management and consulting. I've worked with major Fortune 100, global Fortune 100 companies where I've launched new products, primarily in consumer technology for Philips Electronics, Compaq Computer, HP. And my last role was as a VP of strategy for a company in Kentucky. And I think what I bring to the panel is I'm very good at research, strategizing, putting strategies together. We're basically just doing business plans, so hopefully that's something that's useful to the group.
Well, I'm impressed, Mike, as I hear all these introductions. I don't know that I've got much to say. My wife and I moved here 6 years ago as I retired as city manager in the city of Euless. I was with the city of Euless 15 years and city manager for about 9 of those. I did spend about 6 months with Westlake after that, just in an interim position as their interim city manager when Trent Petty left over there, if any of you may remember Trent. I'd known Trent a long time, and Mayor Bradley at the time. I spent 23 years with TXU, Texas Utilities, prior to that, in various management positions around the state. In fact, this area of Northeast Tarrant County was my first managerial assignment back in 1977, I guess, and I was seeing the early beginnings of Trophy Club at that time, and I was looking here, I think the MUD was formed in 77, is that right? So about the same time the MUD was created, and had fond memories then, and we love it living here now. So when we retired in Euless 6 years ago, this was our first choice to move out here. We've been married 46 years, and our son and his family live here, so we're hope to be rooted. And Robbie, I think
Yes.
my wife did some work with you. I
did.
saw your name over there a moment ago, so you're a friendly name at least. Look forward to serving with you and getting to know each one of you, and I guess my only hope would be is that we can all face this challenge with as little emotion as possible. It seems to me, as I read the papers and read some of the information that comes out from time to time, these topics get very emotional very quickly. And I think, as I've heard, a lot of the talent here pertains to analysis and facts, and I think that's the real crux of what we need to get to, is making decisions based on good facts and not just emotional feelings. Look forward to it, and thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Sandy?
I'm Sandy Millett. I've lived in Trophy Club for 13 years with my husband. I was chosen, I think from what I said in my resume, I'm a professional writer. I've also done extensive radio and television. But when I lived in Beaverton, Oregon, I was selected by the mayor to be on a site selection committee for a new $15 million library. And it was very contentious. We had residents who wanted one thing, and we had a group of investors who definitely wanted something else. And so I have been prepared in thinking about doing this, that we may well have people either contacting us by email or beating on our front doors. And I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. But my whole feeling on this is writing a clear, concise, succinct report for the manager and the city council so that they can understand, hopefully, a very complicated situation and present it in a simple manner. And I just want to put a little addition on this. My husband has Parkinson's, and I'm a caregiver, so my phone is on. And if he calls, I go. Outside of that,
Very good.
that's all I have to say.
A couple other people I want to introduce to you is Patricia Adams, the town attorney, and Tammy Yard. Her sign right now says Human Resources Manager. She has been selected and will start next Monday as our town secretary, and we're certainly very excited about that. And she'll also retain her HR responsibilities as well. So she's going to be a busy lady. She's going to get some help. She's not going to do it all by herself, but you'll get to know these ladies and some others from my staff along the way, as you need. As I mentioned, this is, if you have questions, If you have needs, if you have ideas, or anything that we can do to help provide you with whatever the information is that you need, that's what we're here to do. We're here to help you with bringing subject matter experts in front of you, as an example, or representatives from other agencies, or whatever the case may be that you might see a need for. We're here to help, and that's what our role is. We certainly have a breadth of knowledge as it relates to this organization, and we will be able to help you provide information as it relates to the town's organization. I mean, that's what we do. We live in that capacity. Yes, sir.
Well, Mike, could I ask a question?
You bet.
Before I came here, we got a letter from the MUD, and it said PID customers may soon be left high and dry if the town of Trophy Club continues to drag its feet on extending the MUD's wholesale water contract by the September 17 deadline. That's tomorrow. Is there anything that would that render moot what perhaps some of this panel may be wanting to look into?
I don't think so. I'm not real sure what the MUD's defined date certain is, or why. We currently have a contract in place with the MUD to provide water and wastewater through 2018. I know that they are making progress toward designing improved facilities, such as a wastewater treatment plant or potential additions to the water treatment plant. And they need to know sooner than later who they're going to provide services for. But I don't know what's driving the September 17th deadline. That's a date that they put on a letter to us, and
You don't know what they're referring to?
in terms of what?
The deadline.
Well, the September 17th deadline is their deadline to us to enter into an extended, take that 2018 contract and extend it. They wanted a long-term contract for water and wastewater to provide for the PID. And your town council right now is less than inclined to consider that at this point, because there are other things that need to be considered along the way.
Does that have an impact on with TECQ as far as the wastewater upgrade, or?
I know that they are having to
filings?
deal with upgrades to the wastewater treatment plant as an enforcement action from TCEQ. And I would only suspect that they would, and this is, again, this is not an answer from me. You need to ask that of the MUD. But it would certainly be, if I were in their shoes, I would be interested in knowing what we're building our new wastewater treatment plant to serve in the future. Is it build out of the town? And some of these questions may be answered along the way as you get into all of this. Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a question. Does the contract that you have with MUD, does it specifically say that they are to send you at a certain time frame or period this offer or this extension?
No.
So it's not written in a contract? All right.
No.
That's what I needed to know.
No, this was
It's just an
and we can
arbitrary
get into
number.
the history of all of this, but frankly, I think we're jumping the gun a little bit. I would really think that it would be very important to kind of cover some of the organizational stuff tonight, because not everybody is on the same level of understanding, and as a consequence, I think it's very important to start from the beginning and move forward. And in that capacity, I've got some people to come through with and talk about a chronological timeline, what the current organizational structures are. But before I do that, I want to make sure that we all understand what your mission is. What is the council charged you to do? And in your book, you've been given a copy of the resolution that the town passed, and you'll find that resolution. I'm looking at your chart, your
It's on P.
item P, tab P. If you'll go to tab P, that's the resolution that the town council passed a couple of weeks ago. I just want to draw your attention to what your charge is, so that we are fully aware and understand what that is. And I go to the second page, section 2, because that's really the meat and potatoes of this resolution. The Blue Ribbon Panel purpose is to review the existing governmental structure within the town of Trophy Club, including the operations and structure of all government entities operating with the town. So let's just take that statement for a minute. One could say, well, does that include the NISD? They have a presence in our community? No, we're not looking at the NISD. I do want to clarify that point. But what it does say is that you have the authority and the breadth to look at every component of the town. Policing, EMS services, community development, HR, Parks and Rec. It doesn't restrict you from just looking at the individual components of the town and determining what's best and most efficient moving forward. The bottom line is, when it's all said and done, we hope that this panel will have a recommendation to the council for what the future governance of Trophy Club will look like moving forward for the future, okay? And the town's organizational structure is on the platform, as well as the MUD. Those are the two governmental entities that are in the town today. The panel, yes, ma'am? Sure.
That's a very broad scope.
It is. It may be that you don't want to do that. It may be that this panel decides, let's just focus on pieces of that, or one or the other, or that's something for this panel to deliberate and discuss.
Was there a rationale in your mind for having?
No, only the only rationale would be that, we are an open book. We're transparent. We're not trying to hide anything. We are very open-minded to a thorough analysis of our current organization as well. You bet. Okay. The panel shall provide analysis and provide recommendations regarding the potential consolidation of the town and MUD, the benefits and liabilities that result from continued water and wastewater services to the town of Westlake, associated fiscal impact, and related matters. And I'm very happy to have Sandy here to help us in that final report and to help us maintain focus as we move forward. Are there any questions about the purpose? You've seen that language. You've also seen, perhaps on our website, the bullets that I added to the agenda. We just took it right off our website. Examining the current government structure in Trophy Club, researching best practices in municipal government, and providing recommendations to the council. Same thing. I hope that we're very clear about what it is your mission is. Are there any questions about any of what I've just described?
I just have a question relative to process.
Okay.
If this is not the right time for a process question, that's okay. Just tell me.
We're going to talk about procedures in a few minutes.
And I'll read it.
Because I can promise you, as many of you as there are here, there's at least that many ways to skin this cat. And I think it's going to be really, really important that we all come together and provide some structure and framework on how you want to proceed moving forward. And again, use the town as your liaison to provide whatever information or speakers or persons that you need to do your analysis. Okay? All right. If there's no other discussion about the charge from the council, we good there?
Well,
Yes, sir.
From your standpoint, speaking for the council, if you were asked to list 1, 2, 3, the 3 most important issues that you think the council would like us to address. The three issues, simplifying it, assuming that 4 people on the panel took one issue and 4 took the other, or something like that. And the 3 top issues that you think that the MUD would like to have the answers to. I mean, I know they didn't come to the meeting where the issue, this issue came up, but if you in your mind were to put those 2 together, what 3 issues would you have this panel address?
Well, you're putting me on the spot here.
Could I answer that for you? Because you told me otherwise in the meeting. He's not supposed to do that.
I don't want this to be about what Mike Sly wants you guys to do. I really don't want that. This is all about what the council's asked you to do. I can certainly help you with, it's a very complex and complicated issue as we talk about the MUD and town's relationship and
But
what
Mike,
should we
the
moving forward.
council and the MUD know more about this than we do. And it seems to me that the reason why this panel exists is because there are definitive issues that separate them and that need to be addressed by the panel. And we need that insight to begin our work.
Right. And I think I can provide a somewhat of a structure in terms of what, you know, what are some of the issues that need to be addressed. You know, one comes to mind right away is our fire department. You know, our fire department today is the only split agency in the town. The MUD is responsible for the fire component, and the town is responsible for the EMS, emergency management component. And that fire chief answers to both, the town manager and the MUD manager. And, you know, that's not always very efficient or hard to deal with. The town is charged with providing for the public health, welfare, and safety of our community. And safety is a 3-legged stool: police, fire, and EMS. We've got 2 of them. We're responsible for 2.
Payroll handled in that regard?
The fire, the guys that work down in the fire/EMS department are considered town employees for pay purposes and personnel policies and that kind of thing. They are, we treat them as if they were a town employee.
So their salaries and all costs related are in your budget.
Half of their salaries are, half of them are in the MUD. It's very complicated. That's what I'm saying. I don't want to be the answer to a lot of your questions. I can give you some structure about some issues that need to be addressed. There's the MUD and PID, and again, if you'll allow me to at least get a basis from which everybody can work from, we can get into some of the structural framework. There's an item on the agenda later on this evening to talk that very issue. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. I don't want to bore you with a lot of stuff, but at the same time, I need to make sure that you're all, I mean, some of you that especially live in the PID may not have lived in the town when the MUD was created or when the town was created and when we adopted our charter and those kind of things. And I think those are all very, very important to understand and have a basis moving forward. So is April here? Yes. Thank you. April? April Riling is our Public Information Officer and Marketing Manager, and she pulled together a very, I thought, thorough, chronological, historical document that I'd like her to carry through with you.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Blue Ribbon Panel. My name is April Riling. I'm the Public Information Officer and Marketing Manager for the town, and I see several familiar faces here tonight, and I want to just personally thank you for serving You have quite a job ahead of you, and I'm here to help in any way. My email address is on your contact sheet there under the staff section, so feel free to reach out to me if you've got any questions that I may be of assistance. I'll address you to the timeline under Section A, and it is in your panel here under Section A, if you'll just turn to that section. This was put together with the help of the 25th Anniversary Committee. Trophy Club was incorporated in 1985, if some of you might know. So a few years ago, some dedicated residents got together and threw a great big year-long party celebrating our 25th year. And this document was directly pulled from them. So sir, I cannot take credit for this. Margie Cantrell, however, can. I don't want to go through this. You all can read this document. It just is going to provide you an overall timeline of where we are, how we got here. It does have MUD information in it, so you can see when they were formed, when they consolidated, when bonds were taken, and things like that. So it kind of gives you a nice little comprehensive look of our history here in Trophy Club. To supplement this, you can go to the website, trophyclub.org, and under the Visitors tab at the very top, there's some additional information about Trophy Club history. And if you're interested, the Medlin Barn, the cemetery, all kinds of great little factoids about Trophy Club, just as supplemental reading. But really, I just wanted to come here and show my face and thank you again. And if you've got any questions, please email me. Okay? Any questions for me right now? No? Okay, I'm going to get back to EDC 4B. We're at the other end of the building. So thank you very much for having me.
If you'll turn, what is the tab for the organizational charts?
The organizational charts are under tab B.
Tab B. If you'll turn to tab B and look at what we provided you as organizational charts of both the town and the MUD, and I'm going to ask Tammy Yard to review those charts with you to kind of give you a basis of where we are today.
Okay, the very first one you'll see is for the town, and at the top is the citizens, and then the citizens elect the mayor and council, and underneath that you have the town manager, the town secretary, and the town attorney. Town manager has an assistant town manager that reports to him, as well as the PIO, Director of Street Services, Parks and Recs, HR, and Police, and then he has the EMS component of Fire Department. Underneath the Assistant Town Manager, we also have an IT Director, a Director of Finance, a Community Development Director, and a Court Administrator and Economic Development. All of those people report to Mike. And the town secretary and the town attorney are here to assist the council and Mike in that. The next one is the MUD organizational chart. They have the MUD customers, and then they have an elected board of directors. Their board of directors has a district manager that oversees finance. They also have a financial and HR manager. They have a district secretary. They have a utility superintendent, a wastewater superintendent, and then they have the fire component of the fire department. And as you can see, they have several people that fall underneath them as well. Do y'all have any questions regarding the structures? So there's actually actually like HR department and finance department on both, for both entities, as well as there is a finance department for both entities, and there's a board, there's a council that has for the town side, and then there is a board of directors for the MUD side.
So
Would you
the
mind?
14 firefighters, 7 on this org chart and 7 on the other?
We just split it in half. It's literally a 50-50 on their salaries. So like 50% is in the town budget and 50% is in the MUD.
May I pose a question?
But it's the same person. I mean, it's literally, so we have the 14 people, and it's the same person. It's just that we're splitting their salary and all of their benefits in half.
7 on this org chart for MUD and 7 on the town, which means, are there 7 firefighters and salaries are split, or are there 14?
There's 14 total.
I got it. Thank you.
Right.
With regards to reporting, capacity, the fire chief reports to the I mean, he's an employee of the town. I just want to make sure I have this.
And the MUD.
And he's an employee of the MUD. Who directs his work?
It depends on
What he's
what
doing.
work it is.
So in the case of a disaster, who wins?
The town has got emergency management
Okay.
services.
Just want to make sure.
Emergency
divided
management falls
somehow.
under the town. The mayor is the only one that can declare the disaster, and,
Okay.
yeah.
It's relatively confusing.
So in brief, Mike, how do you function with that? I mean, it's the same
Nightmare.
people doing two different primary functions, fire suppression and EMS.
That's correct.
How do you do that?
I don't mean to laugh at that question, because it is. That's one of the issues that we're dealing with. I mean, it's very difficult to provide fire and EMS when two organizational structures, two governmental entities might have different visions and, core competencies and values that don't necessarily merge. And, if the MUD wants to go in this direction, the town wants to go in that direction, it becomes a very difficult process.
That topic in itself has been my primary concern.
Me
over
too.
and above actually the water and wastewater service here. I've had discussions with you, and I've had discussions with MUD members related to that. It just seems to me that and I don't mean to jump the gun just on the organization chart, but that it's just untenable managerially for both
I certainly
part- for-
wouldn't want to wear
for both
Chief
parties.
Thomas's hat.
Excuse me?
I wouldn't want to wear Chief Thomas's hat. Especially this time of the year when we're developing the next fiscal year's budget. Everything he wants to do has to be approved by two different elected bodies. If he wants new firefighters, he's got to go justify it to the council and then to the MUD.
There
To the
was
MUD.
discussion back a few months ago as far as an opportunity for them to go 100% to the MUD payroll, was there not? And I know there was information in the newspaper about their retirement benefits.
That's right.
And whether they would do as the Public Works guys had to do, was to leave TMRS and go to a new retirement system. But the fire guys chose TMRS.
Yes, they did.
Was
As most,
that being discussed as a all or nothing at the time, possibly?
we had approached the MUD this time last year about consolidating the fire under the town. They wanted to be consolidated under the MUD. And
They wanted to be.
the MUD wanted it consolidated under the MUD.
I see.
The town wanted to be consolidated under the town. And we're right where we
Fire
were
department
this time
themselves
last year.
took no position, I guess.
The fire chief did take a position. He, what he has to do from a fire capacity is be compliant with obviously state law, but also several ordinances that have been adopted by the council, not the town, not the MUD. So I don't want to put words in his mouth, but this time last year when he was asked, he felt like it was most important to, if we were going to consolidate that operation, it would be done so under the town.
So the police chief's the fire chief's office is here,
In the new fire station, yes, ma'am.
and he handles only us, the town and MUD. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
All right, and so.
That's what he principally is responsible for. But like all the other fire departments in the region, we have mutual aid agreements with Westlake and Roanoke and Keller and Grapevine and South Lake, so that if we have a larger fire that would require additional assets, we can call on that mutual aid agreement, and all of a sudden, we've got all kinds of capacity here to.
But no other town pays the chief. County pays
Well,
the chief.
that brings me to the next topic, and I'm going to answer your question by looking, and you have this, I believe, in your at tab D.
Mike, before we hold that thought though.
Yes, sir.
Is there any other overlap that you would identify,
Sure
with
there
these
is.
charts?
You know, and we have what's referred to as an interlocal agreement, an ILA between MUD and town, and we have several of them for different reasons. One of which is personnel support, information technology. One IT department that is a town asset, the MUD pays the town annually for IT support, whether it's hardware, software, you know, electronics, everything that we're doing tonight, all of the technology that we're using tonight is all IT. And we share that. And I say we share that. We provide support, and it's generally about a 60-40 split between the town and the MUD in terms of the time and resources dedicated to support each organization.
I thought they recently hired an IT person.
No, sir.
They didn't?
No, sir. We used to, that same interlocal agreement used to involve a lot of other agencies, HR as an example. You know, all of the HR functions were performed by the HR department in the town, and they paid for some of those services through this interlocal agreement. That has since, the MUD a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, I guess, made the decision to truly split the sheets, if you will, other than IT. And now they have, you know, HR and finance and legal, and we have HR and finance and legal.
IT remained the same.
IT still is shared on about a 60-40 split.
All those ILAs are in our book, aren't they?
I believe we have included those ILAs.
Thank you.
I'm trying to understand something. I've never worked in government, but I've worked in enterprise for many years. And a matrixed organization is very common. I've always had one person that I reported to, another person control my budget. And if I wanted an engineer, I'd get FTEs from the engineering people and have to negotiate with them about what I was paying them and so forth. So what makes what what makes that so unattainable that you have the chief reporting to 2 different people? Why is that so bad?
Because their budget literally is split in half. I mean, you know, the EMS component, you know, the medicines and the ambulances, you know, and the medical protocols, the town is completely responsible for. The fire component, the fire engines, the capital rolling stock that they have, the brush trucks, the hoses, the equipment that they put on, that is a MUD function. And when it gets murky is when we start dealing with people and the manpower and who's responsible for what, and you know, finding that right mix. And we generally get to that point. But I can give you an example this year as an example. This budget cycle, the fire chief asked for another firefighter, a full-time equivalent, or full-time firefighter. And the town asked the fire chief, we're responsible for emergency management, chief. How many people do we need? How many paramedics do we need to provide paramedics support, EMS support for our town? And he answered 6. He needs 2 on a 24-hour shift at any given time. That's 6 people. Well, you heard earlier, there's 14 and he wants a 15th. And the town's position is, we have what we need. You've got more than 6 paramedics. Why would we need any more? Because our focus is on EMS. It's not about fire and EMS, it's about EMS. We end up, to keep the peace and continue to move forward, funding half of an FTE, funding a half of a firefighter, because it's the right thing to do.
A typical duty is two on duty at all times.
Well, I mean, for paramedic stuff, no. We're trying to get to the fire department to the point where they have 5 firefighters on shift, because
But
they've got
paramedic-wise.
medic-wise, we've got to have at least 2 medics, right? but for the entire shift, for the fire and medic. Remember, they wear the same hat. If a fire bell goes off, he's got to have 4 on that truck. And with just 4 on a shift, if one's out training or sick, it's very, very cumbersome, very difficult, and very expensive, because now you got to bring somebody in overtime or provide part-time support or whatever the case is to get that 4th on that truck. So we're getting to the point, the new fire station will accommodate 5 with all the rooms and that kind of thing. We're trying to get to the point where it makes sense to have 5 to a shift. This is the second of 3 years that we would have added another firefighter, assuming that the budgets that are being proposed tomorrow to the MUD and next Monday to the council are passed. But it's very, very complicated and very political. That's just the nature of the beast. And from the fire chief's perspective, he's got to keep both organizations informed. You know, he's doubling his work just by the very nature of the organizational structure.
How does that differ from what you dealt with?
I mean, what you're discussing is stuff that I've dealt with for the last 25 odd years, and I think anybody in business.
Can I kind of interject there?
Yeah.
Having an operational background, it gets really, really tough when you're trying to operate and you have multiple bosses you're answering to. I've, in the aviation world, but also I've been a training officer for a base where we worked with cities on mutual aid agreements for both fire and police. And I've seen firsthand where if there's no good command structure and you're not going to the same chain of command for funding, personnel, and everything else, it does operationally, it causes a lot of issues that otherwise wouldn't be. It may be a little bit different in the business world as opposed to the operational world when you're fighting fires and you need equipment. I just,
That's what I'm trying
this
to
is,
understand.
see, yeah.
I mean, you as a pilot, you probably reported to a wing commander.
It was all straight. It was a straight chain. I wasn't
Or
answering
sent
to.
the captain.
Yeah, it always. It's just from an operational standpoint, it's interesting because as a businessman, you're going, I do this all the time. As an operational guy, that would be the worst situation I could possibly be in, is to have to answer to multiple people for the same stuff to do my job. So I think it's a perspective issue in this case that. It may be tough to understand, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of times where we're going to be talking business in budgets, and I'm just going to you're going to see a deer in the headlights look in my face. So
What I would suggest
I've
from a
worked in both sets of organizations, public and private sector. One of the challenges in the public sector, and this was difficult for me when I made my first move over, is a lot of the statutory requirements that you have to deal with in the public sector, and you're also providing the services to the public without the necessity of the profit motive. And the profit motive is a good thing, but that kind of strips away a lot of the other governance issues in the private sector that never go away in the public sector.
Isn't that exactly what you're looking at on a fire truck when you got to run 4?
Mm-hmm.
4 guys.
Yeah.
You got to run 4.
I don't have a choice.
Yeah, what I would add to that, I think it's very much apples and apples when you talk about the bureaucracy and having to answer to multiple leaders. But the margin error, Robert, if you and I miss something in a matrixed environment, we might not have a product launch, we might be at a service level, but we're not talking life or death. And I think Timothy, and his scenario and the chief's scenario is, if the bureaucracy and of the matrix gets complicated, the consequences are much different than what you and I are used to from a business perspective. It's, if we don't have that 4th person on the truck, there's people that could be in harm's way if the fire breaks out, and if that bureaucracy caused that, that's a big issue. Whereas if you and I have bureaucracy, we might not roll out a project on time, right? But the consequences are much different, I think, in our business setting.
Fair enough, and I'm just trying to understand that.
May I make a motion like that? I'm getting trained in government.
Well, I don't know that you can, because I don't know that, honestly, this discussion.
Informally, just make a recommendation. I'm sure we have millions of questions we could pepper Mike with until dawn.
Yeah.
But I think he has an agenda that,
Yeah.
and we're
back
kind
up-
of getting anchored on
Thank you.
something right now that
I was
we're
going to
learn
try to
about
pull
later.
you back in and come to this agenda. This is obviously an issue that needs to be addressed and deliberated and analyzed, right? But that's for another time when it's agenda to do so. One of the things that's very important that this group understand, and I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of homework, is that you have to comply with the Open Meetings Act. There is no option for compliance with Open Meetings Act. You must comply. Anybody know what that means?
Yes.
Okay, there are some who don't. Your homework is we're going to give you a citation to go out on the web if you haven't already done so. How long is that? About an hour?
It's 2 hours. There are two components. There's an Open Meetings Act component and a Public Information Act component.
Public information and open meetings are the transparency that local governments conform to. You are part of that 800-pound gorilla now, and you have to conform to the Open Meetings Act, so and the Public Information Act. So if you have not already done so, I would ask you to go home, get a couple of hours on the computer. You can go through it. There's a test at the end. You get a certificate, and you can turn it in to Sandy, and Sandy will get it to us, and we'll keep it on file for you so you don't have to do it again. But you need to understand what open meetings and public information acts are all about. And one of those things is to stay on task, to stay on the agenda. And you know, we've been sitting here talking about fire for quite some time, and you know, we've allowed a little bit of latitude, but we need to get back to the agenda and what we can talk about.
All right, if we go online and do this, is that counted as a CEU?
I don't know.
believe so. It's a statutory mandate to take it, so I don't think they're giving you any credit for it.
All right.
Do we have the agenda? I'm sorry, is it in our binder?
Do you not have a copy of the agenda? I'm sorry, you should have been given a copy of the agenda. The next thing that I want to do is really kind of go through your book and tell you what you've got, and if there's something in this book that we provided that you would like electronically, I would ask that you let Sandy know. And we will, just about everything that's in this book is available electronically if you want that. But there was just so much information that pertained to what it is you were trying to do. We wanted to be all-inclusive. So we can certainly, if it's not currently electronic, we can certainly scan it and make so. So if that's your druthers, we'll certainly provide that for you if you'll let Sandy know what it is you'd like. And you can just take your, what do you call this thing?
Index,
Your index
table
or,
of contents.
yeah, table of contents, and identify which ones that you would like. Some of these documents are very, very large, and we'd have some difficult time getting that to you, but.
Question, quick.
Yes.
Working?
Uh-huh.
All right. Public Information Act and Open Meetings Act, or they just go on and Google that, and they come up just like that, and we know which 2 hours
We
to
have
take?
that citation.
Or do
I-
you
I-
send us the link to
She
an
was
email?
placing the link on.
It's actually in the book.
It's in the book. It's
Okay.
on the
Page 2.
second page of the book.
That answers the question. Thank you.
There you go. So we provided the link. If you haven't done so in perhaps a role on another committee that you've served on or you're currently serving on, don't go do it again if you've already done it. But we do want you to do it if you haven't. It's very important. All right, so let's get back to the agenda. We're going through the reference material. We've gone through a timeline and the org charts, and the reason, honestly, that this group is here is the Vision 2030 Committee. We spent the better part of a year with a group of citizens. It started out with 30, and over time it dwindled, but they finally gave us a a vision of what Trophy Club, what their vision of Trophy Club should look like 20 years down the road. And we use that along with the strategy map and what the council has adopted, and that's in your book as well. In every financial decision that we make, if we can't tie a financial disbursement to something on that document, then we shouldn't be spending that money. That's how we approach our work. You've got those documents, and those documents have been refined over the past 3 years by our council, and I know that they are very proud, as we are. It provides legitimate direction and vision for the future, and that's how we make this town move forward, as opposed to roll back. Is that we have that vision and the council's support to move forward with the dollars that we do have to make things happen. So that's all in your book. The McLean report. Well, I've got it up here for the benefit of the folks in the audience as well. This is the town of Trophy Club. You heard several references tonight of mud and PID. This is a mud PID map. And I can enlarge that. You've got it in tab D that you can look at in your book. But that area that's not colored in gold, this area right through here, is referred to as the Public Improvement District, the PID. Half of you live there. The rest of that map of Trophy Club, colored in gold, is the mud. That's the MUD's district. And one of the complicating factors to what you're looking at in general between the mud and the town and the consolidation and all that is this little section down here that is currently in the mud district that resides in the town of Westlake. And they provide water and wastewater services and tax the property values of the Solana Business District, of that area in that section. Ordinarily, MUDs are created, and they are the precipice of creating towns and cities across the state. Many, many MUDs have been created to be given the taxing authority to implement infrastructure to get a subdivision started. And over time it grows, and the town then incorporates and they consolidate with the MUD. They become the local governing authority. The town becomes a full-service town to include utility services. This is a peculiar case because it involves two municipalities, Trophy Club and Westlake. The local government code doesn't allow for the town to just consolidate with the MUD to provide a full-service range of municipal services, because it's also resides in Westlake, and the law doesn't allow for that. So there are ways that we can overcome that, and I could sit here and tell you all about it, but I think it would be best to hear from experts on the matter, and I'll be more than happy to bring those people forward to talk to you about how do you do that if that's what you want to recommend. If that's a recommendation, how does that work? How can you do it if the local government code doesn't allow for it, or the water code doesn't allow for it? Anyway, so there's that, and I wanted to make sure everybody understood what the PID and the MUD is. Not everybody understands that, even today. Some of my staff still get it confused. We've got the McLean report, which was before my time, but it was a consultant that was engaged by both the MUD and the town, and wasn't well received by certainly the MUD or the town, to my based on what people have told me, but he did a lot of research. And I think that's part of the historical knowledge that you need to know, that this is not the first time that this has been looked at. The Wallace Group report is an engineering firm that was engaged by the MUD to consider future wastewater treatment plans moving forward, to, considering Trophy Club build-out. And you've got that report in your packet. I've mentioned these interlocal contracts, interlocal agreements with the town and the MUD for water and wastewater operations, supply and the water supply and wastewater treatment, the MUD interlocal agreement for retail water and wastewater services for the PID 2013. You've been provided in tab J direction to draft so this year, this whole idea just kind of took off. To give you, and it was in the chronological timeline. So if you want to read about it, but since January, we've been trying to work through an agreement with the MUD for long-term services to the PID, and just can't seem to get there. There are political issues that have cropped into the mix. It's a very complicated issue. You got the chronology and the documents that were submitted and subsequently rejected and counter-offered, and you've got all of that in your book, and it's going to take some time for you to get through to get a good basic understanding of where we're at today.
Mike,
yes, sir.
Could I ask a question? Since we're on this topic, without regard to the legal issue of the Trophy Club governing the Solana area, wouldn't it be better for the Solana area to be governed by Westlake? Is it a tax and revenue issue? Is that the main reason why Trophy Club wants to keep the Solana property that is in Westlake under its jurisdiction?
Well, let's be clear about the terms you're using. The MUD wants to keep it.
The MUD wants to keep it.
The MUD wants to keep that little area in Westlake. You bet. I mean, it does represent
because of the
revenue and tax, water and wastewater revenue and tax revenue.
Okay. And is there any other reason why they want to keep it?
That's a question that you may want to pose to the MUD. If there is, I'm not aware.
Where does the town council stand on that?
I can tell you that just by the discussions I've had with the town manager in Westlake, Westlake just recently, over the last 2 or 3 years, adopted their own property tax rate. They didn't have one prior. But they have since done that because they have their own fire department. And as a consequence, the residents and the property owners in the MUD area are being taxed twice, in theory, for the same service, fire services.
In Solana?
In Solana, yes. The Westlake property owners in that area. So they're not real enthused about the idea of being taxed twice for the same service.
Does the MUD provide any fire protection for those facilities any longer?
Mutual aid only.
When called?
Yeah. When they're requested to come by the Westlake Fire Department. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
Like I said, there's a bajillion of these little intricacies and complexities throughout this entire discussion that we'll get into.
Does Trophy Club get any revenue off of the Solana area?
Does the town of Trophy Club or does the MUD?
The town of Trophy Club?
No.
No.
No. We have no authority. We have no authority to cross that highway.
Can I just add something on the mutual aid to Westlake? To that, they do mutual aid to other towns too, so it's not unique with just the Solana section of Westlake.
That's
correct?
correct.
We'll
That's
do it
correct.
for Roanoke or whoever else needs it.
Right. I mean, most of the fire and EMS mutual aid goes right across the Marshall Creek to Roanoke. I mean, if you look at the fire department's operational reports on a monthly basis, that's the preponderance of their mutual aid calls are in Roanoke.
Now, the town of Trophy Club does not have a contract with Solana, is that right? Only MUD has that.
That's
And do you know?
that's correct.
All right, do you know what the date of that contract is? Is it the same date that we have, 2018? Or
No. You know, and it depends on who you talk to. And this gets into the legal world. There was a 40-year contract that was negotiated 31 years ago with IBM in the MUD. And there's approximately 9 years left on that particular contract to
No new
provide
contracts
services
or
to
anything.
the Solana Business District,
all right, and there's not been any new contracts.
not to my knowledge.
All right, thank you.
Okay? So, lots of reference material in your book. I don't expect you to go home and memorize it all. We'll help you along the way. It may prompt questions. Write those questions down. Bring them back to your panel, okay? We'll do what we can to help answer some of the issues and questions that you come across.
Mike, I'm a little confused on the map here, if just quickly, but there's, I don't even know how to describe it, if it's, on this, I guess I'll just use Byron Nelson High School. It shows a little strip there, north-south strip, all the way, coming all the way down on the western edge of just right, come on over a little bit more, right there, that little strip, and then this, are
This
you
right
saying
here?
that that's in the city, in the town?
No.
No, that's Roanoke.
No,
I
that's
didn't- I
Bobcat
didn't think so.
Boulevard
That's
and-
old Marshall Creek.
That's on Marshall
Yeah,
Creek.
okay. And also the, on down below, it just looked like that was shown as part of the,
Okay, so
Okay.
let me just address this particular, there are white segments of this town, of this map, and I'm on them right here. This is where the LDS church is being built right now, and very soon there'll be a medical office building there, we think, next to Medlin. Those properties are no man's land. They're not in the pit, and they're not in the mud. They're inside the town limits of Trophy Club. Okay?
How's the water and sewage there?
who ended up serving the church?
Right now, it's vacant property,
Ah,
right?
But
So
when it's habited,
So the LDS church, as an example, they'll be the first ones to have to go across this, leap over this hurdle. They'll either have to petition to the MUD to be annexed into the MUD, or they'll be subject to what the MUD refers to as out-of-district water and sewer rates. They're still part of our community. And the pit is outside that district, and we'll get into all of that, when we get into some of these interlocal agreements, because, you know, well, we'll get into that in much greater detail.
Does that include the pool and the park, the baseball?
No, the pool and the park are government owned, right. But there's three properties, LDS, and then right now, if you've been out there, you'll see a Montessori school sign, and then that little island area next to the Medlin are in no man's land. Okay? All right, so I've gone through the reference materials. Again, if you have any desire to see any of this stuff electronically for whatever your needs may be, let Sandy know and we'll get that to you as quick as we can.
What specifically are Sandy's responsibilities?
I'm sorry?
What specifically are Sandy's responsibilities?
Sandy, Sandy and I have had the opportunity to meet prior to this meeting. to address that very issue. Sandy is taking minutes of the meetings and is going to help us out with documenting that, even though we are videoing it and capturing it by audio. She'll still submit the minutes, and then as you near your recommendation phase, she'll help provide the documentation to submit to the council, your final report, if you will.
Okay. Let me be a little bit more clear in terms of my question on the report. Glad that you're a great writer, but I just want to make sure that the product of the report is the report of the panel,
That's correct.
and that, you know, we have processes in place to ensure that it represents the views of the I don't know you, Sandy. I'm just talking about process, but I do want to make that point.
It
because
may
we
be-
don't know where we're going to land up.
May I say
Right.
something?
Sure.
Well, the city council, if you were not at the last meeting when they announced the blue ribbon panel, I was told I could not speak. So if you see me twitching occasionally, that's the reason. But I plan on doing whatever the panel wants and whatever the panel decides, and trying to put it in succinct words so that it doesn't end up a 20-page document that's going to take the city council 3 hours to go through. I think it's very important to me, and I hope to you all, to convey what you decide in a succinct, clear, brief manner, so that everybody can look at it, read it, comprehend it, and then take whatever you decide forward in whatever manner the council wishes.
And just like council meetings, the agendas and the minutes that are captured will be posted to our website, so that it'll be current for anybody who's got any interest in knowing what's going on. It may be that this panel decides, that the chair and the vice chair may decide to have a subcommittee to help Sandy pull that last report together. We haven't got to that point yet, right? That is a good point.
I always say, you know, begin with the end in mind.
Yeah, you bet.
To avoid a lot.
Speaking of processes and that kind of thing, what's important, at least for the ladies to my right and my staff, is to have some kind of a regimented meeting schedule, perhaps. When would be convenient. We would love for you guys to be able to tell us, yeah, we can meet at 2 o'clock on every Thursday afternoon. We don't expect that. You know, many of you who have run with us, with the town before, know that we have a propensity for late night meetings. We certainly don't want to do that. I can tell you that in our last ad hoc committee, the Charter Review Commission, they put a 2-hour time limit on their meetings, and it was really received well, and it functioned well because you stayed focused and you wanted to get through your agenda, and it didn't just drag on and on and on. But we're at your pleasure. We would like to have some regimented schedule, and do we have a copy of the calendar? Of the meeting calendar?
I can pull one up, but I don't have it.
You know, there are several Mondays that are already occupied. There's Tuesdays that are occupied. There's just about every night of the, Thursdays is P&Z, and I mean, CCPD meets periodically, and there's a lot of committee meetings, and they're all generally in the evening. So if we can find a hole that meets everybody's needs to come and deliberate and discuss, that would be a really neat thing for us to do.
Was there a date we're supposed to make a deliverable by, or is it?
The council had thrown out a date of 12/31/13.
It's impossible.
That may be a little aggressive for the breadth of what this panel may want to discuss. And, well, yeah. We didn't know if you wanted to meet on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis or a monthly basis. The point that the council wanted to make is we want you to get through this. We don't want to be sitting here 12 months down the road and still not have a recommendation. Let's get through this. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be a lot of work, a lot of analysis and homework on your part.
Well, Mike,
But we can get through it.
initially, is there a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday evening that is available for us to meet?
Most Wednesdays, I can tell you, are available because we try to stay away from church night. I don't know how that fares with this panel. I can tell you that our staff is prepared to meet on Wednesdays, if that's what your preference is.
I would like to suggest Thursdays because those of us who are still employed or contracted, if we're traveling, you know, it's easy to be back on the ground Thursday night.
Yes.
I would agree with
Either
that.
that
Thursday
or-
nights as well.
Yeah, from Monday morning, you know, but yeah, Thursday night.
Okay.
We didn't get a consensus, though. Is it going to be Thursday, or is it going to be Monday morning? Is it going to be Monday afternoon? That may be the first thing we need to vote on.
Don't we need to elect, you
Need
know,
a chair first.
we need a chair and a vice chair so we can vote.
Okay.
Just tell Mike that.
We can do that as well.
Chair and
Let
vice
me,
chair.
before we move to that chair and vice chair, I will tell you that our town attorney's schedule is a little bit different. She's available to the town Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Thursday and Friday, she's available to the town by way of computers and telephones. And she does certainly more than what most 40-hour full-time employees do on a weekly basis. But she also has judge and attorney responsibilities elsewhere. So Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays, and honestly, you know, I would love her to be here. There may be, if it's a Thursday, there may be Thursdays where she's just not, she's unavailable. She's in court or whatever the case may be. And that's fine. I mean, we'll get beyond that and work around it. All right, you want to skip to the next item and elect a chair and vice chair? And then you guys then can determine when you want to meet. I'll open the floor for nominations for chair.
Nominate Jay. Jay.
I second the nomination.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? There's
I would like to nominate Joe Henning.
You want to nominate Joe Hennig?
I have a question for Jay.
Okay.
Because, I mean, we haven't taken a vote yet, so we can still.
Okay. Well, we got a first and a second for Jay Como, and you have a question.
Yeah, my question is, Jay, you indicated that you were interested in taking leadership, but you also indicated you've got a global organization. You've got a pretty heavy workload. Do you have capacity?
That's a good question. And in full transparency, I think it really is going to come down to I have capacity to do the analysis. If we're talking about meeting once a week, then I would say, thank you, gentlemen, for the nomination, but that might be challenging for me. If it's more like once every couple of weeks and anything outside of that, then the answer is yes. So I have as much capacity as I need for us to do the busy work. Just the meetings is the question for me. Great question. Hopefully that answers it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Is every other week good? Will that get us there? Can we get there?
You know, I look at 1231 and it's very blurry. You know, and all the council's going to ask is that you come and ask for additional time, and they'll grant it. We'll put it on the consent agenda. They just want progress. They're looking for progress.
I would say weekly is a little bit heavier of a commitment than, based on all of your jobs, weekly is a pretty heavy commitment to ask. So
I would
personal opinion would be
agree.
yeah,
I-
bi-weekly
if
would
we
be-
could go every other week, every 2 weeks. But every week, even though I'm retired, I'm busier retired than beforehand. But I don't know. I think weekly is going to may be challenging for most.
I can tell you from a staff perspective, because we have to have these agendas posted by 72 hours in advance, a weekly meeting would be very challenging.
But given the desire that you want the panel to really start addressing the issues, I'm certainly not opposed to committing every other week.
I move we elect Jay's by acclamation.
Are you prepared to accept that?
I am prepared.
Okay. Does that require a vote, Joe?
I think so.
All in favor of electing Jay Como as the chair, raise your hand.
Right.
It's unanimous.
Vote
Jay?
against myself. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome as the chair. You want me to go ahead and continue, or you want to take it from here?
I'll get some training before I take over.
Okay. One of the issues that I should share with you is these agendas. I'm intending to meet with the chair and the vice chair to help pull an agenda together based on input from the panel of what you want to discuss. What are those topics and that structure and the framework that you want to discuss moving forward? This is not a Mike Sly agenda. This is going to be an agenda that we will provide the administrative support to for the chair and the vice chair. And I'm assuming we would be able to meet. And I'm available from 6 a.m. to 6 p. anytime. We can do it for breakfast or whatever the case may be. Okay? Vice chair.
I would like to nominate Nicole as vice chair.
And is there a second?
I second the nomination.
Okay. Any questions you want to pose to Nicole?
Pose her question back to her.
It's back on you.
And during the, I have an engagement that's going to be starting shortly. So Thursdays I can definitely commit to. The other nights of the week could be challenging depending on this client. So.
And the prep meetings with Jay to determine the agenda and that kind of thing, would you be available in the early morning or late evening or something?
Or if we can even do those by conference call if necessary. I mean, I will do everything that I can to be here.
Okay.
But it's just.
Are there any other nominations? Okay. All in favor of Nicole Fontaine as the vice chair, raise your hand. And there you have it.
Well, thank you, everyone.
So, Jay and Nicole will be the chair and vice chair of this panel moving forward, and how they organize and skin this cat will be very important to hear. I'm sure they'll want to hear input from the rest of the panel on how we go about doing all of this. And there are topics that I can share, as Ron Edens had asked, you know, those top 3 topics or whatever. There are topics that we can maybe design discussions around. So I'll work with the leadership in developing that.
So do we have to meet as a group every time, or if we have subcommittees, do we have a quorum for a subcommittee, and do we have to meet here?
You want to address that?
Okay. It depends on how big your subcommittee is. If you have a quorum of the committee meeting or the panel meeting, then it's a quorum and you're subject to open meetings, and we're going to post that agenda. Other boards and commissions in the town will have subcommittee meetings of a smaller group assigned to certain tasks. And if you do that, then you can meet with those. And I'm not sure, I don't think the council gave direction. I'm trying to remember if the resolution specified. I believe actually the subcommittee meetings were to be open as well. I apologize, I don't have the resolution in front of me, but do you remember, Mike? I remember we had a discussion about the subcommittee meetings. Were they going to be open to the public too? I don't remember.
Not unless there's 7 or more of the membership.
Right, okay.
So is that the number greater than 7?
Yeah, quorum of this group, there's, yes, 7.
We can also go with decisions, as long as no decisions are made.
Moving forward, as you start taking decisions, yes, you'll have at least, you'll have to have at least 7 to move forward.
So does that apply to email traffic as well? If we're soliciting information, it's
I'm
less
glad
than
you mentioned
7?
that. Let's talk about email traffic. Reply all is against the Open Meetings Act. Do not reply all. That's not an option.
Thanks.
You want to swap seats?
That's the other
Now, Patricia,
already, that's a shame.
I was looking forward to talking football.
the resolution says all meetings of the panel, including meetings of any subcommittee of the panel, shall be open to the public and shall be held in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act. Is that your question?
That's what I was thinking. I thought that that's how it was initially written. Typically speaking, they're not required because they're less than a quorum. But the council's objective was that this be very transparent and open to the public. And so yeah, it is written such that subcommittees are to have open
So we'll need
meetings
to
as well.
post the subcommittee
We need
meetings.
to post the subcommittees as well, yes.
There you go.
Yeah, section 5.
Now, my intent is not to video every subcommittee meeting.
Thank you.
You know, we can meet in a smaller room, in a smaller work-type conference room. But when we do have the full panel, this is where we'll meet.
Who's going to record those meetings?
Subcommittees?
Secretary.
The subcommittee meetings, you mean? Will automated recording devices.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Can I ask a question that I'd like to see in terms of analysis?
Sure.
I'd like to see some. I know that we have the 2013 budgets for both the town of Crevco and Mr. Chairman. I'd like to see some of those line items put together in a spreadsheet so we can compare historical data to go backwards maybe as much as 7 years, because a lot of what we're going to be doing is based on the footprint of what's already happened. So we need to see trends, and I'd like to have that produced for us for the next meeting to take a look at some of that data.
I'm not as familiar with the MUD budget, obviously, as I am with the towns, but the town will provide, the town's budget provides for you actual data for the last 3 years, I think, and projected for the next 2.
I'd like
The
to go a
current
little
intake.
deeper, if I can, into that and actually put it in a trend analysis. So rather than just have the numbers, I'd like to recommend that we look at a trend analysis. A trend analysis will help me as an analytical person take a look at what has happened.
So you're
what is
asking
happening.
specifically for what? So I can.
It's called a trend analysis.
Yeah, I
He'll-
understand, but I mean, how much time?
Probably at least 5 years for both, minimum.
Okay.
5 years will give us a good run.
Jennifer McKnight, my counterpart in the MUD, the MUD manager, has, I invited her to be here as a co-liaison. I think the MUD is trying to pull together their own committee to evaluate the same kind of things that you're looking at. So that her effort will be that way, but she did indicate to me that although she won't be a co-liaison, she will provide all the information requested. So I wouldn't anticipate having trouble getting any of that information.
So Mike, is an order of practice that those types of data requests that Wes is asking for, and I've got some as well, do I channel it through Sandy?
That would be a great
And
way
then
to
she
do
can
that.
go to you guys to hold that?
And I'll deal with Sandy as opposed to individuals, with their information requests. So if you'll funnel everything through Sandy, she's going to help offload some of the administrative burden that we're going to accumulate by virtue of this panel.
I'm assuming those requests have to be in the form of a request, correct? There's a reason why I brought it up in this format. If you make a request for information, does it have to be,
A request for information to the MUD or to the town?
yes,
Okay.
either one.
To the MUD, I'm not certain.
clear.
There have been a couple of different discussions. I believe they've agreed at some point, or Jennifer's made comments at some point that she would provide documentation as we went along. If we're not getting what we want, then I'm sure we could do an open areas request as well, but it's much better if we can get that information just by walking down the hall and asking for it.
And I will make the same commitment to her and her panel as, if they want information from the town, we'll certainly provide it.
So Mike, one other question about just a practical matter of functionality. So for the panel members, if they have similar requests of data that's not in here, would it be, they would come to me as the chairman, I would consolidate, it wouldn't be, they'd have less than 7 members on the email traffic, and then I would consolidate, because that would help shape agendas, and then get that to Sandy, and then she would go and get it from the town?
Well,
that sound logical? Is that within our...
Well, there are a couple ways, I guess, to do that. We typically have the future agenda items on the agenda, so we'll have a time for board members, panel members, while they're here, to bring their list of items, and that may be the easiest way and less time intensive on you, is if people will bring those. If, during the week you're doing some kind of analysis and there's some information that you want, I think the objective was to funnel that all through Sandy, so that she could get that to staff, and we could get that, once again, not, trying to help the burden on you as the chairperson.
Got it. Thank you.
Other,
You said there was budget of 2 future years and 3 past years where?
it's in the town's budget, yeah.
Okay.
It's in the 2013 budget, right?
What we provided you is the 2013. What the council is going to consider is the fiscal year 14 budget on Monday night moving forward, effective October 1st.
That's a bad question.
The organizations that the town and the MUD belong to, for example, is the town a member of ICMA? And if the MUD is a member of, I think it's AAWA or something like that, the American Association of Water, something. If we could possibly have access to whoever controls those memberships for the purpose of funneling questions, getting access to best practice information, subject matter experts.
For the town, I'm in.
Okay.
I can, I'm a member of ICSC, ICMA, TCMA, Texas City Managers Association, and the Texas Municipal League.
Okay.
Texas Municipal League is an organization that has a plethora of best practices.
Okay.
Any other questions? Or thoughts or concerns?
Let me just ask, we deliver a report, what happens then? Is there any requirement that they either, if the council takes any action on it, or is it just delivered and thank you, we go home?
It could be just what you suggested. It could be that you submit the report to the council and they thank you and you can go home and rest peacefully. I hope that's not the case. That's not certainly the intent. But again, the local government code is very restrictive about what can happen moving forward. There are options available to you. There's options available to the council. I think it's just important that, our community hears what this body is recommending moving forward. And we don't know what that will be yet. When it's all said and done, those organizational charts were intended to tell you and to remind you that the citizens are in charge. That's who we work for. You pay our salaries. You elect those officials to provide direction and policy guidance moving forward to the town and govern the town as you want them governed. That's what the citizens are. So I would hope that whatever your recommendation might be moving forward is taken in that vein.
Mike, is there any expectation from the council that some sort of a obviously not the final recommendation, but some sort of a status report between now and December 31st, where the council doesn't hear from us until the end of the year or when our recommendation is prepared?
I'll start answering that question by first announcing that we have a quorum of our council here tonight.
Okay.
There are 4 elected officials of your elected town council in the meeting.
It's only 3.
There's 3 now.
I think
Jeanette's here back.
Jeanette's sitting in the back because she doesn't think she's allowed to, but she can certainly join us. Jeanette, you can join us if you like. I didn't know she was back there, but no, we will post all of these meetings with at the bottom of this agenda. That there's the possibility of having a quorum of our elected officials. I don't know if the council will, I mean, if the council wants to hear from the panel or from the chair or the vice chair, they'll certainly let me know and we'll get in touch and make that happen. They've not indicated that to me at this point.
So Mike, in terms of scheduling, with Patricia's busy schedule on Thursdays, I guess first I'd ask for the panel, does Thursday work? Do we want to vote? I think we know some of Nicole's challenges. We do need to establish what night we'll meet, and well, let me back that up. If it's in fact a night, I would suggest that 7 to 9 works, but that's just for me. So can we just get a quick discussion about how we can start to schedule this? And I know we've agreed on the frequency every couple of weeks, but we need to determine a day and time. And so I guess I would say that Thursday seems to work best for Nicole. Wednesdays works best for me. But I can do Thursdays, and I would ask for 7 to 9 with that 2-hour cap, and then open it up for discussion from there.
This room's taken on Thursdays?
Occasionally, the P&Z will meet in here. And I do believe that their meetings are televised or videoed.
What's their frequency?
Twice a month.
Okay, so the possibility we could alternate.
You bet.
I do have obligations on Wednesday nights. I would prefer not to have to break those. Also, with the teaching, do not get home until 6 p.m. hour, and so 7 to 9 works good for me. So Thursday would be my preferred.
So do we have any objections to Thursday, 7 to 9?
It depends on how often. I also travel quite a bit. And I usually travel Monday evening through, Friday morning, because I'm a football official, so I always have to get back for Friday football games. So I want to make sure that still happens. But
you really wanted to make that public?
Yeah, I know. Might as well. Might as well. But anyway, so for me, I'll make it work. I just need to know a long time in advance what those nights are in any event, so I can plan my schedule.
Okay, so you're challenged, Wes, irrespective, unless it's a Friday. Well, you're challenged all week, so we'll have that as a caveat, right?
I'll make it happen. I just need to know a long time in advance.
Understood.
Well,
Ronald?
let me ask Jay, can we split maybe split us into 2, with maybe she's handling one group, you handle another group. Yeah, they kind of meet offline, and just have one meeting per month to bring up whatever the subcommittees, their work during that month or every few weeks. Because it seems to me kind of beneficent to have everybody here for every meeting. It seems like we can split ourselves up, split the work up, have a couple meetings to figure out what we're doing, split up the processes and the work, then we go to maybe once a month and
Yeah.
report up to the full committee.
So what you're saying is one formal blue ribbon panel committee a month,
Right.
and then subcommittee meetings,
Yep, and then
possibly 2.
sure to get 4 of us scheduled at a breakfast or on a Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever it's available. We can say, everybody who's available for Tuesday, this is your task.
I would say if we're going to do that, we need to break up functions as well, because we can't be talking about general issues with only half the group and then try to catch up on the monthly meetings. So if we're going to break up,
But we can have a couple, the way what I've kind of done in the past is you have the full group, we figure out what our agenda's going to be, figure out what the process is going to be, what we're looking at, and then break down into smaller groups for most of the work, and then meet maybe, I don't know, once a month or so to bring everything in front of everybody else, and we'll make a presentation to ourselves. The subcommittees will present to the full committee.
So
And it may break it down into smaller pieces to make it more manageable for all of us.
So I think we're probably, what I'm hearing is we need to identify the landscape. So,
Right.
so
We need to figure
perhaps
out
we
what we're
can
doing
say,
first.
let's meet again in 2 weeks, if that Thursday's free, if we don't conflict. And in the meantime, let's start thinking through the construct. We can do some data requests. We've got one from Wes. I've got a couple that if I have a chance, I'll mention. If not, I'll go offline. And then we can start to think collectively how we might want to break up into subcommittees,
Right,
what we want to
figure out
analyze.
streams, and then we bring the streams back together at a later point.
So I guess the first task, I would say, let's establish the next meeting for 2 weeks, if that's free. And Mike, you,
It's not,
It's P&Z that night.
okay, so,
If you're looking at Thursday, that would be October 3rd, and there's a P&Z meeting that night.
okay. So the 10th, perhaps, October 10th?
That's 3 weeks from now.
It's either,
Not the
it's
following
either we meet next Thursday. We gotta get off cycle with P and Z. So next Thursday is what day?
Can I make a recommendation, Mr. Chairman? I think we should meet initially soon.
Right.
There's a lot to do and review.
and then.
And for me, I'd like to get it in my mind and then have a meeting, because this has been a meeting about meeting.
Right.
I'd like to have a meeting about the subject. And so if we can do that next Thursday, then we can kick off into, developing our organizational structure.
Would the volume of information we have push us towards meeting extending the span between now and the first meeting to give us enough time to get through all this and everything else?
And our
Maybe next week?
videos and the certification things that we have to do. Did I hear that the 10th and the 24th are the good weeks in October?
Yes.
Okay.
I would think with the volume of information we have to cover, meeting next week would be, I know I won't be able to get through all of this.
So I guess we have
Next week.
we have 2 questions, or
Yeah.
two options. One is we meet next Thursday to hit the ground running, not knowing everything that we need to know, and we can proceed accordingly. Or we take some time to go through our certifications, to drill into the data and really level set. Either way, I don't think there's a wrong approach, because once we get there and start and get the ground running, we'll break into our respective subcommittees and we'll get churning along, and we'll still shoot for the 12/31 date.
And Jay, what I would offer to you and to Nicole is perhaps you and the three of us get together and kind of build some subjective framework, identify those issues.
Right.
And I can get an email. You can't, but I can get an email. I'm not violating the Open Meetings Act by communicating with all of you. And I can get an email out there that says, this is kind of where we're headed. And give everybody an opportunity, and they can, it may get the ball rolling in terms of thought process of how we want to move forward.
So I think the happy medium would be we meet next week if we can, so we don't lose ground, and then that gives the broader panel time to dig in, which we'll do as well, and get our certifications, drill into the analysis, and then Mike, in the meeting next week, you can start to help shape what the subcommittees look like. Have you thought about this and that?
Well, I mean, I want you guys to do that.
We'll shape it and you'll communicate it.
I want you guys to do that.
We'll shape it, you'll communicate.
Okay, I'll help.
Since that
Okay.
seems to be a concern.
Perhaps the panel members could submit an email to Mike with their suggestions on subcommittees, and then we'll have that information available.
Yeah, but I think we need to keep Sandra in the loop. I think that's part of the role of the secretary. And the question is whether you want it to come to you and I,
send it
actually
to
Nicole
me.
as the chair and vice chair, or directly to Sandra, which she can then communicate back to us.
I think any kind of communication between the three of us would include Sandy.
Yeah, so that's it, right? So that's the 4, and we can start to seek data that way, and questions and comments around subcommittees. We can meet next week to try to chisel that down a little bit, and then put up time, probably the 24th, that third weekend in October that it's open, or?
10th and the 24th, they said, are open, so.
Okay.
I think this is good. I think we need the time to really get knowledgeable. Some of us are green, and we've admitted that as we went around the room. And that would allow us some time to get more knowledgeable, so we're not sitting here asking basic questions that are in the package, like I've done every time I've opened my mouth tonight. And
But you
I
feel
think
like
that's
the 10th
good. And
gives you enough
the
time, right?
The 10th, I think, and Tim indicated some desire to kind of wait too. I think the 10th of October would seem to work for me.
Okay.
To take the 10th and the 24th is getting back in here and
So
getting going, getting
any-
ranked up.
Any objections to the next formal meeting being the 10th?
Is that open here, too?
It's open here, yes.
So 7 o'clock?
But I do have a question.
date? I didn't hear.
That's the 10th of October, I
October
think is
10th.
what they were saying.
And 24.
The information Wes requested come to us before that date?
Trending.
Out-year budgets and
I can tell you that I can speak for the town. I can get past budget information to you this week. I mean, if that's what you're looking for.
My question is, if you have this meeting with Mike and he presents what he supposes is the problem, are you going to have it where after we do our substantial reading, can we say, well, we think this might be something that we need to add to it? Are you going to be open, or is it going to be sealed in stone once you have
No.
this meeting?
Yeah, no, I think that we all have to, I mean, I'm just a vote into the chairmanship, right? I could have said I'm too busy, and it would have been anyone. So I think, I'll speak for Nicole, for the hour and 50 minutes I've known her. We'll be flexible. That I think we need to be very open with the agenda. So the role is I'll try to shepherd it in as the chairman, but if it's not being covered, then I just need to hear from you, from your respective panel members to include it.
So that will be open, all right.
Yep.
Very good.
That's my commitment.
so we didn't elect a dictator?
No. At work maybe, but here I'll be a little more diplomatic.
And one of the nice things that Patricia brings to the table is being able to word agendas, to actually write that language to allow as much flexibility for you to have discussion, right? We still want to comply with Open Meetings Act, and Patricia is very, very talented about wording the agendas so that we have full flexibility to discuss in a very broad sense.
Question, I understand that you can't be here, Patricia, on Thursdays?
It depends. Some of my schedule I have control over, and others I'm appearing in front of a judge and I have no control over. So it just sort of depends. And I'm going to do my best to be here as frequently as I can be here. Thursday night, I do have court obligation in a city twice a month, first and third, typically. So if we're hitting second and fourth, then I might be okay on a Thursday. It just depends. Sometimes I will be in court and I will have a jury trial and I will be there until some ridiculous time in the evening. So I may come late or miss some, but I'm going to do my best to make all the meetings that I can make.
If we have a question, and we can still pose it.
You
to
can
via
still
or-
email me. That is fine. Call me either way.
Okay.
So
I have another question.
One more question. How would we exchange information amongst ourselves prior to meetings? Like if Wes does his trend analysis and it comes up some good stuff, how does he get it to us?
You get it to me and ask me to spit it out.
In other words, what you're saying is we really can't communicate
That's
among
right.
the whole group offline.
right.
Is
So,
that what you're saying?
But if you did your trend analysis and you wanted to share that with the group, you send it to me and say, Mike, will you please share this with the group?
Okay.
And Sandy. Send it
Okay.
to Sandy and Mike.
I have a question. I have a secretary. She would die if I said that. I have an admin, and is there any controversy about her reading my emails that we get? So, because I travel all the time, and I may be out of the country.
That's,
Is there any?
Okay.
you want to address that?
I want to address, I guess, a couple of things, and it's sort of related to that. Open Meetings Act and the Public Information Act that you will also be having training in, because they are related. And as part of this panel, you need to realize that documents you're creating, documents that staff is creating, are generally public records. So one of the things I tell council members and board and commission members is you might not want to, number one, clutter up your general email box, personal email box, with official business. And also, you could be subject to opening your personal email up to public review if you're using that personal email in a public capacity. So what I always advise people is, just for convenience sake, I know it's a second email, but you might want to establish just an email that you're going to use for this panel. And that way when you have emails in there, it's related to this panel. You don't overlook anything and you have it all in one place. There's, generally speaking, the information that's going to be going back and forth will be public information. I don't know that you'll have opportunity for confidential legal advice in any of these proceedings, but if you do, anything I send out that is confidential, you'll be able to tell it's going to be clearly marked that it's confidential. And in that event, your secretary would not be in that privilege to be addressing or looking at those emails. But generally speaking, it's sort of, you need to be aware that you're creating public documents and public information in this process, and you're receiving public information.
What about information like if we receive some type of consultant report, for example, that is for the committee, for the panel, it is being taken in for deliberation. I mean, I've worked in other jurisdictions where those types of reports were in the shade, if you will, until such time as they were accepted, if they were presented in draft, for example.
There are exceptions for draft documents, but if you're generally speaking, just work on the premise that whatever you're looking at, that you're conversing back and forth about in this environment or about this topic, is going to be an open record. If not today, then at some point down the road it will be.
Now, Patricia,
Patricia, has the town council asked you to look into legal implications of this proposed merger that relate to, say, like the PID contracts that the homeowners have signed and the contract that the MUD has with Westlake or Solana? In other words, have you done legal research for the town council in connection with issues that we might be looking at here?
We have been discussing various legal issues, and I've been providing legal advice in closed session to the town council. So I'm not really privy to get into what that has encompassed, but if there are items that you need me to look at as far as legal research or to provide legal opinions, then I'm certainly able to do that.
You could provide it to the panel?
I could provide it, yes.
Okay, well then I'd like to request that.
Okay, well, if you can narrow that for me, that'd be helpful.
With specific
as
questions.
you go along, I'm here to help. So.
Look at all of this.
Patricia, do we need to have a disclaimer on those emails? I know in my business, with dealing with insurance companies, I'm required to have a 400-page disclaimer. I'm kidding, but it's a 2-paragraph disclaimer on closed documents, privileged documents. Do we have to have any of that automatically?
Y'all don't need to be concerned with that. Just
okay.
like I said, you're going to keep in mind everything you're creating is public information.
Okay.
This may be a question more for Tammy, but I know being on another board, we have a Trophy Club email address that's created for us, and I don't know the inner workings of why that is, but are we able to access and use that for all of this panel email, vice using our personal email addresses?
Is that a bounce through though? Are you actually? As I think it's a bounce through where you have a Trophy Club.
Yeah, I'm not.
But then it's going through to a personal email. I mean, that's typically how they're set up, so that we don't have all those accounts with all those emails on our server.
Do you receive it at a private email address?
That's what I assumed, and I wonder if there was some way to convert that so we could access it and use that strictly for this business.
We could set up email accounts for everybody that would be, mine is msly@trophyclub.org, right? tgamash@trophyclub.org, and we can ghost that to whatever account you have.
So
tgamash@gmail.
But it still would open up your personal email for.
Well, you'd.
I'd still recommend that you have a separate email. You're like I said, you're also not going to want your personal email box filled up with blue ribbon panel emails. So.
What about storing all of the documents in the cloud where we can just access it? Like
Oh, we're
Dropbox
talking,
or
you're
something.
talking way above my pay grade now.
Dropbox or something like that.
We'll bring Mike Pastor in
Okay,
next
well,
time.
Yeah, I
I
would
know what the
enjoy
big red
having,
button does on the
I
computer.
would enjoy having most of this electronically.
I'm sorry?
I would enjoy having most of this electronically.
If you'll just identify what it is you've got. It's, like I said, some, like the Wallace Group is a very large file. Some of these are pretty large files, so.
you know, that's where having them in the cloud, where we can
Is nice.
access them when we want, is great.
Because since I travel a lot, I'm not going to take this book with me. I can tell you that. But I will take my my little handheld PID and take a look at it.
We'll see what we can do. I don't know, I don't even know if we have a cloud.
Now, did this gentleman get his answer on, could he get the contracts, subcontracts, and so on and so forth? Did we all agree on that, or did we just kind of run through it? He said he would like to know about the contracts with Solana, and he'd like to have a copy of it.
A contract with Solana?
We
They
can,
just ran right over that.
no, I just want to make sure I understand what it is you're asking for. There is that 40-year contract, we can certainly provide. I've seen that. I know we can do that.
Well, hasn't each PID customer signed a contract when they purchase the property to pay a certain amount and certain rates and so forth? And that was with the MUD, is that correct?
No, that is not correct.
Who is it with?
That is, they are assessed to, when the Public Improvement District, the PID was created, there was $27.5 million of bonds that were issued, backed by the property owners in the PID.
My question is, though, that contract that they signed, who is that with and who enforces it?
Can I, it's not a contract. The assessment, there's two types of assessments, one of which is attached to the land, and that was done before any home was sold. So the infrastructure assessments are attached to the land. So they're there. The emergency services assessment, which we'll be having a public hearing on the 23rd, is an annual assessment that is a charge that Denton County will bill out in the tax bills. There's not a contract that you sign. When you move into the PID, then you are subject to the assessments on those properties, and they are assessments on the properties.
So it goes with the property?
Yes, sir.
And who is the enforcing entity for that contract?
Well, we have a PID administrator, and we also use the same firm that does tax collection work for the town, also does the assessment collection.
So if this switch, if this doing away with the MUD and the town takes over all those responsibilities, do those contracts go with the town? Go to the town?
The PID assessment that is for the infrastructure that runs with the land is going to be with the land until it is paid off. The emergency services assessment is an assessment that is assessed to those PID owners, property owners, for the fire component of the cost of fire services, because we're contracting with the MUD for those. In the rest of the town, the fire component is part of the ad valorem tax.
So the people in the PID will pay the same amount to the city if this merger goes through?
The people in the PID would continue to pay the infrastructure assessment, but whether the town's emergency services is part of its tax rate for the remainder of the town. So that emergency services assessment would in theory go, because it would be encompassed in the town tax rate.
Have you issued a written opinion on that?
I have not, no.
What's in the town bylaws, or it's on the website, all the ordinances and everything that defines?
With the code of ordinances we have, and we also have the town charter.
There's a section in there on the PID, right?
No, sir, I don't believe so.
Let's be real clear. The infrastructure assessment has no bearing on what you're considering. That's going to be there from now on until those $27.5 million worth of bonds are paid, right? Because that's what put all the infrastructure out there. The streets, the water, the sewer, the lift stations, the elevated water tower, the improvements to the intersection at Trophy Lake Drive. All of that was paid for with PID infrastructure, PID dollars. And it's a 30-year PID, and those of you who live in the PID are paying that on as if it were a mortgage added to your mortgage payment. That's your piece of the infrastructure attached to your property. The assessment, the emergency assessment, would go away under a consolidated government because the property tax rate would include fire and EMS. Today, the town's property tax rate only includes EMS, not the fire.
For the PID.
For the entire town.
The entire town, oh, okay.
For the entire town.
That's right.
We have no responsibility for the fire department right now. The MUD assesses a property tax to the MUD residents for fire and debt service, basically. There's a little bit more to that, but predominantly for fire and debt service payment is the 13.339 tax rate that they assess, the MUD customers. The PID does not get assessed that, or is not exposed to the MUD tax rate.
So a consolidation would or would not affect the PID customers?
It would. It would make everybody on the same level playing field. Because today there's a calculation that they provide that says of that 13.339 cents per $100 of value, X amount of it is for the fire department. And would you please, town council, assess the PID customers for their fair share of the fire department? And that assessment goes out and it's collected along with their property taxes and property assessment.
The PID and the MUD are really, as far as a similarity, is MUDs were developed, years ago, and it was a financing tool for the developer so that they could, pass bonds and impose taxes to pay for infrastructure improvements. The PID's a similar developer financing mechanism where they are using that through an assessment process to get money to put that infrastructure in. So in that era, they are similar because they can both be used to finance infrastructure.
But the PID will continue to exist even if there is a merger?
Yes.
Of
On the land side.
MUD
On
and
the land.
the town?
Yes. Yes. And at
So that
some
death
point when those
retirement.
PID bonds are paid for, then the assessments are finished. And that was the purpose of the formation of the PID, was to have those assessments and fund that infrastructure.
And Mike, I know you weren't here, but what was the general thinking of doing that with a PID for a residential development?
Well, I mean, it was controversial. For those of you who were here can attest to that. It was a controversial issue, but it became a financing mechanism for the developer to come in and do what he did. And, today, it's still controversial. But the fact of the matter is, our community was insulated from the economic downturn in 08 and 09 and 10 and 12 and 13, however long it's going to be. We've been insulated. We've been growing like a bad weed because of that decision to create the PID and issue those $27.5 million worth of debt. And it's backed by the property owners. So let's, as an example, let's say it flopped on its ear and there wasn't a house bought. The developer was responsible for all of those properties' debt service payment. He took a real risk because he was on the hook to pay that debt service for that $27.5 million in year one. And as the PID has grown, people have shared in that risk, and, you know, it's worked out beautifully for both the developer and the town. You know, we grew at 15% this year. That's unheard of in this area. You know, other communities are happy to get 0 to 1 to 2% growth. We're at 15%. It's just,
What financing was used to extend Trophy Club Drive, not into the residential areas, but Trophy Club Drive
up into the PID?
up into the pit?
PID.
You used
The
PID money to do
$27.5 million.
That's part of the 27 million
Yes, sir.
to build Trophy Club Drive?
Yes, sir. And all the water and sewer and drainage and all that stuff that came with it. The lift stations, the inverted siphons, the elevated water tower, all of that.
Is the elevated water tower 100% town-owned?
Yes. And not only, but all of these external facilities, like the elevated tower and that kind of thing, the developer, it was financed at 80% PID and 20% developer. So not only did he have the risk, and still does, for all that vacant property out there, he pays those assessments for all those other properties that aren't built out yet. And he paid 20% of everything else that got built. We're way off.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get back on track. So I think we've actually covered the key parts to the agenda. So I just want to make sure we're clear for protocol. And I'm sorry, because I think this might have been discussed. But in terms of because these are all good questions, and we're going to have more of those as we drill into the data.
Right.
So is it green light for the panel members to send data requests and questions to Sandra, to you, to Nicole, and I? That doesn't violate any.
That's correct.
Right.
And you don't even need to, I mean, if you want something, send it to the two of us, and we'll affect it and push it back out to the entire panel.
So as you respective panel members have great questions that you've had going forward after you drill into this, you've got the forum to ask for it. We'll meet next week to try to shape the agenda, and you'll help us with that, Mike.
Yes, sir.
And then we need to get certified, and then we have a meeting on the 10th that we'll get set up. And I think if there's no opposition, have we agreed to cap it at 7? Have we agreed that 7 to 9 p.m. works, and that we'll try to stick to that 2-hour cap?
Yes.
I notion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second?
Are we adjourned?
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you so much. Look forward to working with you all.